Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out here with me. My name is Alex Castillejos, and this is Just Be Blessed. We share people's testimonies and have left the messages and how God is good. And tonight we're going live on YouTube. And let me tell you, every time when I go live on YouTube, it's because it's something a hot topic, something an amazing testimony. And tonight I have a special guest. Her name is Tammy. Tammy, the last name we're gonna find out. It was very cool from Italian last name, so we're gonna find out all those details. But do my favor, please share this link. Share this link because Sister Tammy seriously has a unique story. Unique story from the title is from rebellion to you know uh, uh, God changed her life for an amazing for something good, a new creation. I mean, seriously, please share this link with your friends and family because I know they're going to be blessed. Let's not waste more time. This is life. Seriously, anything happen when you go live. So let's invite her here. Sister Tammy, how you doing? Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. Here in Just Be Blessed, we just go casual. I mean, it's kind of like think about it. We just sitting down on the couch. We meet each other, and we want to know your story. I hear little pieces here and there, and somebody told me it's like her testimony is a little long. I know we have only 1 hour, uh, but maybe it's gonna be on a different occasion, stuff like that. And but we want to know more about you. It seems like uh, you grew up in a Christian home. How was mom and dad? Please share with us.
Yeah, I actually had a great childhood for the most part. I mean, we
Hmm.
were very involved with the church. I
Okay.
had two sisters. My mom sang and played the piano in church.
Okay.
My dad was the speaker. We went to Bible studies every
Oh,
week as a
nice.
family, regular church outings, events. Grandparents went to the same church, so that was really nice. I used to
Mm.
sit on my grandmother's lap,
Yeah.
and it was very nice. I had a great childhood, no
Mm.
complaints. And my other grandmother, the Italian one, she was very religious. She would
Mm.
pray in the closet, and
Mm.
big Italian family. So I had the best of both worlds for quite a while as a child.
Well, that's
Yeah.
great. That's great. So you were familiar, with Jesus, the Bible, angels, what I'm saying, or the Holy Spirit. So it's not something like uh, I didn't know anything about Jesus or until 30 years old, and stuff like that. But that's very nice. I mean, you grew up with Christianity around you.
I did. It was really nice, and I did learn a lot about Jesus uh, to a certain point. And then my dad got in a motorcycle accident, and he lost his job at the steel plant, and that's when our lives began to change.
Wow, a motorcycle accident, you said?
Yes, yes, he
Mm.
got hurt in a bad car accident, and he could no longer work. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, our life started changing about that time. Sadly, my dad began to drink, and
Mm.
they both cheated on each other. We heard fights regularly at the
Oh
home, and
no.
my mom went to work, and
Mm.
just a plethora of bad things began to happen in my life
Mm-hmm.
around the same time. So that was very difficult.
Yeah.
Um, I saw my best friend get hit by and killed by a drunk driver. Um,
Oh.
so that was very traumatic. He was someone that I turned to when
Yeah.
all this was going on with my family.
Mm.
And I knew something really bad was going to happen. I
Yeah.
knew a divorce was probably on the way. So I had this friend I confided in,
Yeah.
and I literally saw him get killed, ran over by a drunk driver.
Hmm.
And so that was the beginning of my plethora of bad things starting to happen in my life.
Okay. So when your parents get divorced, how old you were when they got divorced?
So I was around 9 years old when they
Mm.
got a
So young.
divorce. Yeah. And, right away, it's just, we changed schools. I don't know, more times than I can count.
Mm.
I began to get bullied at school. And then with all the bullying going on, I struggled with reading. until a kind teacher kind of took me under her wing, and she began to tutor me. And sadly, my mother started getting hooked on prescription medications, and she became a different person. It's like the mother that I knew, that
Yeah.
I, have known since birth, was all of a sudden a different person.
Hmm.
So that made it very difficult. And she was probably hurt and angry over the divorce, but and I looked like my dad. So she would tell me she hated me
Oh.
on a regular basis,
Wow.
and that I reminded her of your dad. You remind me of your father. And so that was very hard, hearing your own mother saying she hated me. And at the time, I didn't know she had mental issues. I was just a
Oh.
child, and I just knew that my mom hated me, went through a divorce. I just lost my best friend. My mom would just stay in her room crying and sleeping, and I tried to comfort my mom. So
Mm-hmm.
what I would do is I would write poems, because I was all proud that I'm finally learning how to read, because I had this block from reading because of all the bullying and change in schools and all the trauma in my life,
Mm-hmm.
that I was excited I could finally, read, and I can write now. So I started writing like little poems to my mom, and I would slip them under her door when she would lock herself in her room, to maybe just to try to make her feel happy.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seemed like nothing worked, and I wanted her attention. That's what it was. I was looking for attention. So I wasn't getting it, because she was,
Yeah.
busy with her own mental issues and things she had going on. So yeah, just all these bad things started happening in my life. I remember I broke my arm around the same time. And then I ended up getting poison sumac to the point where I almost died. It got into my airway.
Yeah.
We had a school project where our teacher asked us to take wax paper and go out and get some colorful leaves, and you iron it in the wax paper. Well, I picked poison sumac, not knowing it was poison sumac, and I'm deathly allergic to it. I know now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I almost died from that. So just a lot, and I ended up failing fourth grade that year. So that was really rough. And
Yeah.
on top of all these other things going on, my dad got a job out in San Francisco, and he moved out to California. So now it's like I don't have my mom, because she's wallowing in her mental issues and her prescription drugs. But now I've lost my father,
Wow.
and I was very close to my dad. So that made it really hard. And he's the only one I could identify with. He knew how my mom was treating me, and I looked just like my dad, and we were just very close. So now all of a sudden, he's gone from my life as well. So at this point, I was feeling like, all this stuff I grew up with about God, and
Mm.
how much he loves you and he cares for you
Yeah.
and all these blessings. I felt like he turned his back on me. And this is when I think my life changed.
Mm. You were saying that your dad moved to California, right? And he was working with uh, the movies industry or something like that.
Yes, yes, he was a scouting captain and transportation captain. He scouted
Mm.
for the different scenes and so forth, like location scouting.
Okay.
And he was a transportation captain, so he coordinated
Mm.
all the actors and actresses to make sure they were where they had to be.
Yeah.
And I actually was, during this time, I did get to go out to California a couple times, and meet, some of these actors and actresses, and that was kind of neat. I thought that life was like, wow, this is,
Oh yeah, I'm
this
sure.
is really great. And
Yeah.
but then inside, I was really hurting, because I didn't have my dad, and all these people had my dad, but I didn't get him. So that's when I think I started to turn my back on God, and I felt a sense of rebellion.
Yeah.
Like,
So how was the
And
teenage years? Because you say it was 9 years old when you parents divorced. So how was 13, 14, 15? I mean, sometimes the time of this
yeah,
is kind of
well, for
crazy.
until he moved out there, things weren't that bad. I mean, it was bad with my mom, but I had, like I said, I had my dad to turn to.
Hmm.
But when he moved, that's when I changed. So my rebellion was I I started my mom and I just started fighting a lot, and I ended up running away from home. I was probably 14 years old, and I remember just sleeping in this garage. I mean, I literally was just sleeping in somebody's garage. The door was open. It was like this really old garage. It's not like a real nice insulated garage. It was like one of those old ones from probably like the 1800s,
Wow.
wooden garage. And
Yeah.
it was really cold. And I remember there was like a cat hole in there. And I put my head on something. I don't remember what it was. And I fell asleep there. And I remember waking up and I'm like, this is bad. I'm not going to survive out here. So I ended up going home. And when I did go home, my mother was super angry. I thought I would get some sympathy, some comfort. Hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
That I'd finally be able to get my mom's attention. I was hoping running away would get that attention that I was craving from my mother. But instead, she got very angry and she fought with me, said she hated me again, and I actually hit her. And I felt horrible about it. And what she did was she called the police on me, and I ended up going into detention center. So I was in detention center for 4 months. But
4 months.
honestly, that detention center, I actually liked it. It was a time in my life that I wanted attention. I was seeking attention and I was seeking structure. I got meals and I got my structure and I got the attention.
Yeah.
People talked to me in there. I got to talk to a pastor on a regular basis. And I felt like somebody's finally listening to me, So I actually like detention center. I'm not recommending children go to detention center, but at that time, it was the right place for me.
Well, you're a young girl, you know what I'm saying? I mean, your parents are 9 years old. I mean, they're divorced, and your dad, move away. I mean, you're a girl that, I mean, you want to be with dad, attention, Even our boys, they want attention too. I mean, they're little kids,
Yes, exactly. So I was in there for 4 months and I felt better about things. And my mom didn't want to take me back right away. So I ended up living with my grandparents on my mom's side, and they're Christians. So I got some more structure and I felt love because my grandparents are very loving grandparents. And they took me in, things were going well. And until a girl in the neighborhood said she had some weed. And so I began smoking weed, and my grandmother found out about it. She actually found a joint in my bedside. And being the strict grandparents that they were, they made me go back home because I didn't stop. I didn't just do it once. My grandmother flushed down the toilet, but I got more. And, they drew the line. And that was it. So I ended up going back with my mom. And at this point, my mom's working full time. And I'm this young teenager and I'm rebellious because now I felt, okay, now even my own grandparents don't want me. So that was really hard. I felt unwanted. So I started going to arcades and having parties at my house all the time because my mom's, she's gone. And so one time I was leaving one of these arcades and a man pulled me in his van and I got raped. Oh. And this was a really low point in my life, but that wasn't the worst part. I was pregnant. And so, I got an abortion. And the guilt And the shame that I felt was more than I could take.
Yeah.
It was to the point where I wasn't sure if I wanted to live or die at this point, because nobody was listening to me. You know, I had this thing going on where I was raped, and I was even scared to tell my mother about that. So I kind of just kept everything inside. Um, of course, I made a police report, and it turns out the guy ended up getting in a car accident and dying, the guy who raped me.
Mm.
But so yeah, I got this abortion, and that was one of the things in my life that just really made me spiral downhill because of the guilt and the shame I had from that. So I got invited to my first rock concert after all this happened, and I was hooked. I was like, oh yeah, this is great. All these people, and this great music. And so I started listening to these albums, Shout at the Devil and all this demonic stuff. But at the time, I didn't know. And then I'm getting invited backstage to concerts, and I'm like, wow, this is the life. I'm getting all this attention from everybody. And so that was my out for me, for quite a while, was this rock music. But what it really was is, it wasn't my out. It was actually a door. It was a door for Satan to come into my life. Yeah, and there's members from Kiss. That's me backstage.
Wow, that was Kiss.
Yeah, they're not the original members. The guy on the right, his name is Eric, and I guess he died of brain cancer. And I don't even remember who the other guy's name is. I think he was a guitar player, and he was filling in. But yeah, that was in Cleveland. So this was my lifestyle for many years, was going backstage. I don't know how I got back there. I just, I guess I had the right look or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did that for quite a while, and I would come home and I would crank up my Judas Priest, my Motley Crue, and just really loud. My mom got fed up with it. She would come in screaming at me all the time, and saying she hated me. And I was to a point now where I'm 18 years old or so, and I just decided, you know what, I'm out of here. I don't even want to live with her anymore. I can't take this. And I remember I just packed up my things and I moved and I went to Florida.
And you were living in Ohio, right? Right?
So I moved to Palm Beach County, Florida, after all this was going on. I actually got a job while I was living, excuse me, in Canton. It's back when we used to get newspapers and read papers. They didn't have the internet. So I used to get the paper, and I kind of had a plan before I even went down there. One of the good things about the high school where I went to was I went to a school where they offered dental assisting as a vocational option. So I took dental assisting for a couple years and worked while I was a dental assistant. So I did save up some money. I got my car and everything. So I kind of had a plan. I had a place, a roommate, and everything all lined up. So when I went down to Florida, I had everything ready to go. So I lived down in Florida, living the beach life and just, having a good time, working, and no relationship with Christ at this point. But he was always in the back of my mind because I still had that guilt from the abortion and the things that happened in my life. I mean, that was always on my mind, and just something I could never get out of my mind because of the guilt.
I'm sure. Yeah. So you were in Florida by yourself, working, have a good time, hang out with friends, stuff like that. I'm sure when it was the moment, because I remember you said something, I don't know if it was when you found a very mysterious letter.
The right what? I'm sorry?
The letter, the mystery letter. I don't know when is the moment that you share.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's much later.
Okay.
So there's some events that I'd like to tell you because
Sure.
it's I felt like I was being punished for
Mm,
my abortion because here's what happened. After being in Florida by myself for several years, enjoying the life and everything,
mhm,
I met this Finnish guy, and we ended up becoming friends, and we got married, and had a wonderful marriage. But we wanted to have children. We were to the point where we really wanted to have children, and it just seemed like every time I got pregnant, I had a miscarriage.
mm,
So I thought because of that abortion in the back of my mind, I felt like God was punishing me because it wasn't just one or two miscarriages, it wasn't just three or four. I had
mm,
like five miscarriages during my marriage.
mm.
And I truly felt like God's telling me I can't have children and I'm being punished because of what I did. So I ended up getting pregnant, but then I found out that was in my tube. So it was what's called an ectopic pregnancy. So this was like the last straw. I was like, wow. And my doctor came in and said, you probably won't be able to have children. There's probably a 10% chance. So I took that as okay, I'm totally punished and I'm not going to have children. And I just have to accept that. But I got on my knees and I prayed and prayed and I repented. And I remember I cried out and just really told the Lord how sorry I was for what I did. And, and before, before you know, I mean, I was sick over everything. And here I ended up getting pregnant.
Wow.
And yeah, and I had a
Praise
successful
God.
pregnancy. Yeah, but it wasn't, I never really cried out to the Lord like
Mm,
this, like I did, because I wanted children so bad that I mean, I literally cried. I was on the ground sobbing and I couldn't eat. And I didn't even know about fasting, but
uh-huh.
that's
Mm,
what I did because I couldn't eat.
yeah.
I was so wrapped up in the remorse for what I had done and focused on repenting that it was just so real, and God knew that. He saw my heart, and I think because of that he blessed me with, I call her my miracle baby, my daughter.
Mm,
So I had my daughter and it was wonderful, continued to have a really nice marriage. And then I got blessed again. So I got doubly blessed and I got pregnant again.
wow.
This time, this
Amen.
pregnancy was a little bit harder. I was sick uh, during this pregnancy, like really super sick. And then I ended up getting bouts of pancreatitis while I was sick.
Mm,
And at this point, I was in bed a lot and just probably not a proactive wife because of the sickness and the
mhm,
nausea and everything I was going through.
mm,
And so my husband started this really great job. He got a new job around this time and he became a superintendent of one of the largest custom home builders in South Florida.
mm,
So we were doing very well. We had a gorgeous home, and here I am. I'm sick. I'm pregnant, and he all of a sudden just stopped coming home. Like he would stay out late at night
mm.
and tell me he's working, and he would come home smelling like alcohol. And with me already being nauseated from being pregnant
Yeah.
and the pancreatitis and everything, I would, get really sick. So I said, you can't come home smelling like this. It's making me sick.
Yeah.
So he would just stay out really late every night. Sometimes he wouldn't come home. Well, he he ultimately admitted he was going to strip bars every night.
Mm,
And so he continued to do this. In the meantime, I had to go to the hospital on several occasions. So I actually had to get my neighbors to take me because he was just never home. He was at these strip clubs and drinking all the time, and it just it was very difficult. So I had my son. I ended up having my son. Had a wonderful birth. Everything went well. Excuse me. And I was feeding my son one day, and I invented a toy called Baby Bottle Buddy. It was to help feed him because he would look everywhere while I was feeding him.
Mm-hmm.
So I called my dad, and I was all excited telling my dad about this toy I invented, and he's like, "Oh, you need to go get this toy patented." So I went to this attorney and got my toy patented. In the meantime, my husband at the time's continuing at these strip bars, and when I start making all these trips to this patent office, my attorney at the time starts giving me a lot of attention and treating me like, hey, somebody's finally, someone I can talk to,
Mm-hmm.
and he thinks I'm important. So that, I think I was just real vulnerable and lonely at the time. And then he asked me to lunch. So, and he seemed genuinely concerned about me and what I was going through. And
Mm-hmm.
he convinced me that my husband, he's cheating on you. That's cheating. And so we ended up getting a divorce, my husband and I. And that was a really tough time in my life as well, because I really wanted to do everything I could to save my marriage. I just had a baby.
Yeah.
I had my little daughter.
Yeah. It's very difficult
So
for a woman, to be in that. Can you imagine being pregnant? I mean, it's not something like it happens, I mean, it's something that two people come together, they love each other, and the babies show up, with love.
right.
And
Yes.
then I mean, you have problems, you feel, you're going through a very hard time because of the pregnancy, and this person is like, you know what, I mean, I'm gonna find something else. I mean, that's
Yeah.
very hard for a lady, like, look at me, I mean.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
wow.
hard, but
Mm,
it's really sad because I almost knew when I was pregnant that I lost my husband anyway. Like, I felt I lost him because he was never home. He was going to strip bars, and those were his women. I wasn't his woman anymore.
mhm.
And then when he was home, he smelled like alcohol so bad it made me want to throw up.
Yeah.
So he couldn't sleep with me, and I didn't want him to because he smelled like perfume and alcohol,
Mm,
for those
yeah.
women. And here I am, getting attention from my attorney now. So it ended up in divorce.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I ended up marrying my attorney, and he ended up marrying some woman, and we'll get to that. But so yeah, so I'm remarried, and I have a baby boy and my daughter, and that was very difficult. But I didn't have to smell the alcohol, and I didn't have to worry about where he's at anymore. And sadly, he continued to do that, from what I understand.
Mm,
But so I'm married to this attorney, and he would often brag about his ex-wife and how she has these nice big breasts. And I'm little, I'm a small girl, and my breasts weren't big by any means.
mhm,
And so he convinced me to get breast implants.
mm,
So I'm like, okay, well, if he's paying for them, I'll get them. So,
mhm,
so I got breast implants,
mhm,
and that was not a good idea. Your body's a holy temple, but I wanted to make him happy, and I went along with that. And so this guy, this attorney, he's not like a patent attorney. He's what's called an intellectual property attorney, which also he's also an entertainment attorney. So I was competing with you know having we're going to all these events. Here we go backstage again, right, into all these concerts, because he represents
mm.
famous musicians and so forth. So I was competing with this lifestyle, and I wanted to be his trophy wife. So I went ahead and got the breast implants. But after a couple years,
Mhm.
I began to get really sick. Like, I couldn't get out of bed sick,
Hmm.
and my body would just ache everywhere. and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I mean, I was tired. I couldn't see very good anymore. Um, my kids weren't getting the attention that they needed, being small children. So that was really tough.
Mm.
So I prayed, and I'm like, Lord, I'm sorry for everything I've done in my life. Whatever's happening to me, please forgive me. Show me what's going on in my life. What is wrong with me? Like, why am I so sick all the time?
Mm.
And then he showed me it was my holy temple that was making me sick. My own breast implants. I started doing research,
Wow.
and he showed me that I was sick because I polluted my holy temple. And I started doing research, and I found all these women who were going through the same thing, who had all these symptoms, and they're going to their doctors, and the doctors that put the breast implants in, and they're all saying, oh no, it's not from your breast implants, there's no way, it can't be from that, it's just part of getting older, and if you have any other illnesses from family members, it could be hereditary. Nobody would say it's from your breast implants.
Yeah.
Nobody, none of these doctors would say that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Lord, show me what I need to do. I know I need to get these things out. Who do I go to? Where do I go to get these things out so that I can start healing? And so I found this woman online,
Mhm.
and she does explants, and she talks about how toxic. Now this is one who will only put them in if a woman has had a mastectomy and has nothing,
Mm.
and she will put them in, but she wouldn't use like silicone gel ones or anything like that. And she exposes all the corruption that's involved with the
Really?
funding that has to do with the pharmaceutical companies and the breast implant companies. So she was in Georgia, so I got the money, and it's so weird. I was reading this book about angels and about the Lord when I was on the airplane, and about healing, and so I'm reading this book, and I get to the page where it's talking about Michael the archangel, and this is when I'm on the airplane. I never met this woman. I just talked to her on the phone, made an appointment. I did believe that God sent me to her. So I get off the airplane, and I'm going to her office, and I'm sitting in the waiting room, and I have my bookmarker on. There's like a picture they have in the book. It's not like a big picture. It's like a little sketch of Michael the archangel,
Mhm.
and it talks about who he is and how he can heal you. And so I get into her office, and she calls me back, and I'm in the operatory area sitting, and she's having a conversation with me about my breast implants and what I think's going on and everything. And I look up, and she has a picture of Michael the archangel hanging up right there in the wall, the same picture I had in
Interesting.
my book. I about fell over
Mm.
on the floor.
Mm.
And that just kind of confirmed that that's where God wanted me, and God was healing me,
Mm.
and that
Amen.
I needed to get those out, because God's telling me that's your holy temple, and I'm going to take care of you, and you're going to get those out.
Mm.
So that was just a confirmation. So
Amen.
I got them out, and immediately, as soon as I got them out, I felt like a different person. I knew God had healed me. Like, it was like somebody took the eye salve out of my eye. I mean, I could see everything. I could feel better. Everything was different. So I knew that was God, and I knew God was working on me
Mm.
in my life,
Amen.
and that He was reaching out to me. But I was always just pushing back for whatever reason.
Mm.
My rebellion,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
For sure.
because I had that spirit of rebellion for so
Mm.
long, because of everything I went through growing up and as a teen, I had that spirit of rebellion. That's what I call it, the spirit of rebellion. So, God healed me once again. So while I was on heavy prescriptions and healing from, recovering from the seizure and the surgery and everything, my husband convinced me to sign a partnership agreement that had to do with my toy and my patent. So, being my husband was also my attorney, I trusted him and I signed it. And about this time, I found out my husband at that time was having an affair with our neighbor. So, yeah, he was going to our neighbor's house. Apparently, while I was sick,
Oh
he
my,
was going to the neighbor's house and
that's the second,
paying visit.
the second
The
husband
second
is
husband,
when you're sick, and
yeah,
then, wow,
yeah. So I was in while I was in bed
bad.
sick, and then while I was because he was getting up on his bicycle and he's going for rides all the time, and he sweats like crazy all the time, but he was never sweating when he would go for these long bicycle rides. And I don't know. I never thought about it until afterwards. Then I started figuring things out. So anyway,
Wow.
so yeah. So that was really hard. So he ended up walking out on me,
Mm.
and here we are. I found out that he hadn't paid our mortgage for nearly a year, and that me and the children were about to be evicted. So that was really hard. So, because here's the deal was that when we got married, that I put $40,000 payment on the home because I got a royalty check from the patent agreement that I signed,
Mhm.
and then he was going to pay the mortgage up until he paid the $40,000, and then we were going to share the expenses of the mortgage. But he never paid the mortgage. He was taking that money and putting it in his account. So I didn't find this out until later. So around this same time, all this stuff's going on, I began to suspect my children were being abused by their stepmother. They would come back, excuse me, from visits at their dad's, and they were smelling like my daughter would have rashes all over her face, and
Mm.
the kids would complain of headaches and nausea. They felt sick all the time. And I'm like, what is going on? So soon enough, I found out that she was running an illegal nail salon out of her home, and it was affecting my children's health quite substantially.
Mm.
So this was where things got even worse for me, because it's one thing for me to go through these things, but it's hard for me to
Of
watch my
course.
children, yeah, going through this. So um, there was all during the same time they were coming home with like bruises, unexplained bruises. And they would like my son, oh, he fell off the bunk bed, and just all these little things going on. And I'm like, at first I kind of dismissed them because I never thought the physical abuse would happen,
Yeah.
because the father, in all fairness, he was never physically abusive toward my kids when we were married. He was actually, he was a good father.
Mhm.
But something happened. I don't know if it was the anger or whatever, but he actually did admit, ultimately, that he was punching the children, and he had to attend anger management classes, and he lost custody for about a year. So that was really hard seeing the children. And then here I am, I'm getting evicted, and my children are being abused. The father lost custody. So I ended up going to Virginia. I met a man on the internet. We've been talking back and forth after my husband walked out on me. And he felt sorry for me and the kids. And, I talked to him. He came down to visit me. I met his children, and he just seemed like a real genuine guy. He came down a couple times, and he's like, you know what? You need a place to stay. I want to help you and the kids. It's probably going to be temporary, but you have a place to stay. I don't want to see you on the streets.
Yeah.
So I got permission through the courts, and we went to Virginia, and I stayed there for a while. It was kind of tough because I had a hard time finding a job in
Mm.
Virginia that would pay enough for me to get a place where I could take care of two children, because I don't know anybody that knows anything about Virginia. The cost of living is very high. So my stepfather at this time said, hey, you know what? just come back to Ohio. I could use some help here with your mom. My mom was terminally ill at this time. She was very sick, and he could no longer care for her. So he said, why don't you come back here and help care for your mom and get you and the kids, get your life back in order. So I ended up moving to Ohio, which is where I'm from originally. So I came back here.
And then,
Sorry.
no, it's all right. This is a live
All
show.
that talking, I had to clear my voice.
Yeah.
So, so my ex, in the meantime, this is really kind of crazy. He made it. I found out because I wanted to find out what happened for that with that mortgage because I put $40,000 on that home, and
Mhm.
I'm out money, and here I am, a single mom,
Mhm.
with no money, no job, and I have two kids. I'm like, well, what happened to this house? What happened to the money that? So I was finally at a point where I could start really digging and finding out what happened. And I found out he ended up making what's called a short sale, and he moved back in there with the woman he was cheating on me with, moved back into the house that I put money on.
Mhm.
And so I knew at that point I had it figured. He had a plan from the time I signed that agreement when I was sick. So that was really hard because I just felt deceived. I felt such deception once again, and I just felt like, wow, I'm just, and I kind of, I guess in the back of my mind, I blamed it on the Lord. Like, no, I'm a good mom. Why is all this stuff happening to me? I was a good wife, and I don't get it. So it gets worse. So
Wow.
my kid's father married this woman, the stepmother that was doing all this abuse with the nail salon and all this, and the father had lost custody, but he was about to get custody back, and I was concerned because of everything that happened in the
I'm
past.
sure. Yeah.
Here she goes and gets a volunteer position as what's called a guardian ad litem. The stepmother does. And during the time the father abused the kids, they actually issued a court appointed guardian ad litem. And she had all the reports saying, yes, I'm a good mother, and this is what the father did, and blah blah blah. But all of a sudden now my case turns around. It starts taking a different path, and this because I think it had to do with her. I'm sure now, but at this point, I was like, well, what's going on? Why did this stepmother get this job as a guardian ad litem, and now she's threatening to take my children away from me? So I found out the position that she got was in the same court as a judge, the judge who issued me to pay $10,000 for the guardian ad litem fee from when the father abused the children. They ordered me to pay $10,000. And I'm like,
What?
why am I being ordered to pay
Seriously.
$10,000 for something he did
Mm.
and admitted to, lost custody for, and had to attend anger
That's
management?
something weird.
So I knew something was weird. So, and she called me up one day and she told me, I'm going to take your kids and you're never going to see them again. And, the courts, and they knew I was a single mom and I was barely getting by and that I was unable to pay this exorbitant fee. And so they issued what's called a financial writ of attachment against me in Florida, which means if I stepped foot in Florida and didn't have $10,000, I would be arrested. So here's where it gets really bad. So one day I was at home and there was a knock on the door, and there was several sheriffs out there. This is at my mom's house. I'm taking care of my terminally ill mother. My stepdad had to go back to work. A knock. It wasn't just a knock; it was a pounding, and there were sheriffs there. And I'm like, I thought something happened to my dad. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what to think. And here they said, "We've come here to take your children, and you're never going to see them again." One said, and I said, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, that was the words of the stepmother. So I'm like, this is really strange what's going on here. So my daughter went running upstairs and my son ran under the bed, and my daughter went upstairs and she started crying, and they're saying they're never going back there. And it was really horrible. I mean, this was the darkest time in my, they literally took my daughter and ripped her, she's screaming and crying, took her away from me. And they got my son, he was under the bed, and they pulled him out and they took my son.
Wow.
And I got a message after they took my kids. I got a message from my daughter, and I don't know if I sent um, a
Yes.
screenshot.
Do you want me to show it?
Yeah, you can. That's fine, because it just shows you where where my children were at that time and how scared they were.
Uh, you know what? I didn't add it to it. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay. So yeah, my daughter sent me a very disturbing
Mm.
message on
Yeah, the cell phone.
the text phone, and the cell phone, and I kept it because it was like the devil taking a knife to my heart and stabbing
Mhm.
me. And she said, mommy, they're taking my phone, and I'm scared, mommy. And she said, they said I'm never going to see you again, and that I can't have my phone. And mommy, I just want to come home, please, mommy. Something to that effect.
Yeah.
That's hard to
Yeah.
talk about sometimes. So I apologize. I get kind of choked up.
No.
So my kids are gone out of my life, and I I felt like I couldn't do anything. My stepdad tried to help me. He gave me a
I
few
mean, how you
thousand
can
dollars.
survive? I mean, seriously, like the next day, the next
No,
day. I mean, what to do?
no.
You know?
Every day, I mean, I didn't know what to do. I called attorneys daily. My stepfather, he didn't really have any money. He just went back to work because he was
Mhm.
taking care of my mom for months. He was dying. And so he came up with a couple $1,000s. I called some attorneys and nobody would take my case. I'm like, this is weird. I have money for the down payment. Nobody down in Palm Beach County will take my case. So I just did a lot of praying, and I got close to my mother because we had kind of a severed relationship because of everything I talked about that happened in my teenage years, with her saying she hated me, and the her mental illness, which I didn't know at the time was a mental illness. But now here I am back in Ohio, and my kids are gone, and my mom and I are getting closer. I'm seeing a side of my mother that I didn't know before. And her and I became very close. And here I am taking care of my mother, who I left and didn't want anything to do with because she hurt me so bad
Mhm.
growing up. Now here I am. I'm doing her nails and I'm helping her to the bathroom and I'm cooking for her and I'm running errands. And I started thinking, wow, this is really, my mom is the mom I always wanted, but I could see she still had her mental illness, but now I'm older and I'm more mature and I know how to deal with it. And I knew what was wrong.
Wow.
And so I just started getting closer and closer to Christ. And I would get on my knees and I would pray. And this is just like when I told you about what I did before, when I repented,
Yeah.
I was, I was there again. I was like, Lord, what happened? I'm very sorry if I wasn't a good mother. Before it was, if I wasn't a good wife. Now it's like, if I wasn't a good mother, please forgive me. Just whatever happened, you know, I, I want, please just forgive me so that, and help me to get my children back. And I was just in constant pain, and I wanted that knife pulled out of my heart because it was so hard being away from my children. They're clear in another state. They're in Florida, and I'm in Ohio, and I just couldn't figure out, you know, how did this happen? What did I do wrong?
Mhm.
What could I have done differently? And then everything just kept pointing to, no, you were a good mom. You didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do drugs. I didn't smoke weed. I wasn't, an
Mhm.
alcoholic. I had wine once in a while, but I was trying to be a decent person and a good mom, and live a godly life. And I lost my children. And so I just began to pray. And then one day the Lord showed me that this isn't about you being a good mother. This is about some really, really dark federal funding that's being used to take children from good parents
Wow.
and give to abusers. And so what I did was I literally follow, you know what they say, follow the money trail. So that's what I did. And I found out that's what was going on
Right.
with the stepmother being a guardian ad litem down there in the same court with this judge. I found out this judge was involved, and I found a website about him where he's doing this to many other good parents. There's a whole website about him. And here she goes and gets a job in the same court with this judge. I was doomed.
Wow.
So, and here I am, I got this $10,000 guardian ad litem fee over my head that I could not pay. And they knew that would keep me out of Florida because they knew I couldn't pay it and I couldn't go down there and get my children. So my kids were trafficked through the court system.
Wow.
And yeah, so God showed me all of this stuff that was going on. And that was really hard, but it brought me closer to Christ. All this stuff, it brought me closer to my mom. Unfortunately, my mom ended up passing away
Mm.
during this time, so she never got to see her grandkids. And I remember her saying that killed her because I think she felt like she had a hard time um, moving on and getting better when she doesn't even have her grandkids around anymore. I mean, we couldn't even talk to them on the phone. This stepmother took their phones and wouldn't even allow them to speak, me to speak, or my parents to speak to them on the
Yeah.
phone for years.
Well,
This was
that was very sad. The situation with the children. I have like 10 more minutes, and I just want
okay.
to ask you two more questions. Uh, that moment that you just drop yourself and say, you know what, I just want to change my life. I know you were starting praying and all the stuff. And can you walk us on the moment to say, you know what, I want to live my life completely with Jesus.
Yes. Well,
Eh,
I did have a couple twists and turns. My mom died, but I found some help through some people in powerful positions in Canton that knew what was going on.
mm,
And I knew God was answering my prayers.
mm,
And then my daughter, somebody put my daughter on a bus and brought her back up to Canton, Ohio.
mm,
And I had a lot of help. And I was like, okay, God's answering I got my daughter back.
mm,
That's when I knew. And I didn't give up on the Lord at this point because I'm like, I can't give up. I don't have a choice.
mm,
And so I got my daughter back. And then my son was still down there for several years. And that was hard because I couldn't get my son back. But because my daughter was in Ohio and I had help here in Canton, I was able to get my daughter back. There's a lot more to the story, but since we don't have time,
mm,
I won't get into that. She had some really dark times going on down there that I can't even talk about on this podcast.
mm.
But so I got her back and I wanted to get my son back, but I couldn't. So I ended up going down to Florida to try and get him back because the father divorced this stepmother.
Wow,
And that's a whole nother story, what she tried to do to him.
wow.
Yeah. So I kind of figured maybe him and I can talk now. I went down there because I paid, my stepdad had passed away and left me money. And the first thing I did is I paid that guardian ad litem fee off. So I went down there to try and get my son, or at least to see him, and I ended up getting arrested. So
Mm,
I'm down there in Florida and I'm in jail for 3 days. But it turns out that while I'm in there, I was so grateful for the Lord for getting my daughter back and everything. And I knew I was like, you know what? This is Satan. He's not fooling me anymore. This isn't God. This is Satan doing this. And not, now I'm on to him.
mm.
So when I was in jail, I just started witnessing to everybody about Christ.
Praise God.
I just told everybody about the Lord. And these three girls were getting ready to go to court and they looked at me and I said, you know what? Can I pray for you? And they said, why? And I said, well, maybe you'll get out. And they said, no, we're not going to get out. We're being sent, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, just let me pray. And please just try to believe. And I prayed for them. And 3 hours later, they came back and they hugged me and they cried and they went home
Mm.
that day.
Wow.
I knew God was with me and I knew He was working on me at that point. So I get out of jail and I'm walking
Mm.
in the parking lot waiting for my son. And I never even got a hearing, which isn't that kind of ironic? Never got a hearing, never was told what my charges were, why I was in
Oh,
there,
interesting.
nothing. Yes. So 3 days later, I'm reading the Bible and then I'm praying, and they call my name over the speaker and say, hey, Risaliti, you're out of here. So I, I walk out and I find this letter on the ground, and it's folded in perfect, like folded like in this perfect triangle. Yeah, that's the letter. And this is a letter from, I'm telling you, this letter is from God. I cried. I bawled my
Mm.
eyes out the whole time I was waiting for my son. And the letter talks about how only people that go through these trials and tribulations can understand what his purpose is and how he plans to use me in the
Mm.
future.
Amen.
And it just goes on to say how much he loves me and he's going to be there for me.
Mm.
But I have to believe and I have to trust in him.
Mm.
This letter changed my life.
Wow.
It changed my life. So I got my daughter back and my life began to change. And I'm now very close. My son, I didn't actually get him back, but we are now very close, and he comes to visit me every second he gets. Both of my children serve in the military,
Mm.
and they're doing really well, and we're extremely close.
Mm.
And a lot of good came out of this because
Oh.
not only was I able to expose a lot of the corruption that was going on down there
Mm.
and helping a lot of mothers through their trials and tribulations, and telling them, hey, you know what? Get into prayer, get close with Christ, and
Amen.
things will turn around for you. So God was using me for his purpose. And throughout everything, that was what I needed. I needed to repent and turn to Christ. And that's when my life changed,
I
was
mean,
when I did
yeah, I
that.
mean, it's lots of moments of pain, I mean,
A
very,
lot.
I mean, divorce your parents, you kind of like, what's going on? I mean, I want attention. And then later on, I mean, growing up, I mean, you want to get married. And, of course, between that, I mean, that's the music you listen and rebellious stuff and the rock and concerts and all the stuff. And I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say this, but maybe you make bad decisions. Like I
Yes.
like this guy. Let's get married. I mean,
Right. Exactly.
I mean,
Right. So I was turning to, you know, other people instead of turning to God. And God was
mm,
trying to get me to turn to Him
yeah,
the whole time.
yeah, yeah.
But I wasn't willing to do that at that point because
Mhm.
I just felt like He was causing all this. But it wasn't until I hit rock bottom that I realized it wasn't the Lord causing any of this at all. It was the deception of the devil that was
Yeah,
causing all this. And the Lord allowed it to happen because I wasn't living in faith. I wasn't trusting in him. And so the devil had an opening.
yeah.
And so, I think we just have to be in prayer regularly and trust in the Lord um, if we want our life to change.
Yeah, and talk
We need to
about
trust
life
in
to
him.
change. I mean, just talk to a little bit about you have a book. You have a book for children.
Yeah. So, yeah, the Kinder Garden. So,
Mm.
being bullied as a child, and my children being bullied, the abuse is bullying. And I really struggled with reading. The Lord led me to write a book about bullying to help children through some of their trials and tribulations that they're going through.
Mm.
So it's a metaphor. The Kinder Garden is a metaphor for life, and how if we treat others with compassion and kindness instead of anger, we are planting the seeds of kindness.
Mm.
And we will start feeling, not only will we make other people feel better, but we will start feeling better about ourselves.
Mm.
And that's what it's really all about. When you start feeling better about yourself
Mhm.
and doing things for other people, that's when you start to heal. And that's when the Lord will start bringing the blessings that you ultimately deserve.
Amen.
Well, we don't deserve anything, honestly, but
Yeah.
he will bless you when you turn to Christ and you ask him. He will bless you. And that's what has happened in my life. He's blessing me. I might not have all the material things, but I have a close relationship with Christ, and that has given me peace and comfort that's what I was truly seeking.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. For praise Joe. Please send me the link, so I'll be putting it in the description below this video, because it seems like people is gonna be interesting about that book.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is live, guys. This is a live show.
You can get it at Amazon,
Okay.
pretty much anywhere online. You can get
Okay.
the
Okay.
book.
Just share with me the link. I'll be happy to put it in the description of
Okay.
this video and your testimony. Thanks so much, sister, for being here and just be blessed to share your testimony. I know it's more in your story, more stuff to share. Uh, but seriously, I mean, what a life! What a life of, yeah, I mean, redemption
Thank you
in the
for
end.
having me on. And yes, it has
Yeah, of
been. It
course.
has been. It's all about redemption. And,
Hmm.
2 Samuel 22:2 says,
Yeah,
the Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. That's what kept me going. And that's who we need to trust in. The Lord is our rock, not people, the Lord.
amen, amen. I wanted to ask you what is your favorite verse, but you
Oh,
jump on it. So praise the Lord.
good.
So
Yeah.
praise, yeah, yeah. Okay, so don't hang up this. Don't hang up. I'm gonna finish this video. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay, you guys. I hope you were blessed. Listen, Sister Tammy, testimony. What a story! Started from very rebellious, but it was the divorce from the parents and stuff like that. But let me tell you, redemption, like somebody over here shared with us, that God doesn't leave us, never leave us, even though that we make bad decisions. Sometimes we make bad decisions, but He always is there for us. Thank you so much for hanging out here with us. But before, I'm going to share with you guys, if you like this video and if you want to support us and Patreon, please join us as a family and just be blessed. There's a different links in the bottom of this video. If you want to support our ministry to make more videos like this, and I'm planning to do some in the beginning of the year, some websites with devotionals, things like that. But thanks so much for your support here, and just be blessed. My name is Alex Castillejos. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week with another powerful testimony. Bye bye.